All right, with the smooth sounds of our background noise from the menu of the game on Discord, there was a Q&A that was done by SDF of a bunch of common questions that were compiled. However, one of the questions that I wanted to see them ask that they didn't ask was one about the number of character slots. One of the things that they really need to do, in my opinion, is to give us at least a character slot per class in the game. Right now, there's 8 character classes that you can play, but we only have 7 character slots, which means that in order to be able to play them all, you'd have to delete one. So SDF went through some common questions that people have been asking that cover a lot of things that people wanted to know. But again, that one part wasn't in there. He said that they're working on adding PayPal, but it's taking more time than they thought. We expect to be able to use PayPal for payments in the not too distant, I guess, future. Again, SDF does not speak English well. It's not like Terry's pretty much fluent in English, but SDF, it's hard for him. He said this many times in the past, so if stuff looks a little broken up, that's why. Will you add a friends list to the game? Friend list feature is required, so that means that they need to do it. Initially intended to use Steam's friend list feature, so we didn't prioritize it. Things are different now, so we're giving the feature a little higher priority, but even then, it will take quite some time. Quest system. Satisfying the needs of each merchant and traveler will allow you to become more intimate with them. Now, getting to know them better, not intimate in the sense of brown chicken, brown cow, but I'm sure, maybe somebody wants to get down with the goblin merchant. I don't know. Are any kind of permanent season rewards planned? Of course, we have a few ideas for this, but I won't reveal it now. Will additional solo maps be added in the future? Yes, and solo dungeons are now established as a piece of content, so they're going to make more solo dungeons. Druid playstyle. Druids will be able to transform into animals. So this is something that they said a few iterations ago when this was asked about. Shape-shifting is at the core of what they want druids to be able to do. They will also have different abilities accordingly. Beginnings are always typical. So I'm not sure what he means by beginnings are always typical, but I think he means at this the druid's core functions will be core functions to what people have as synonymous with druid. So I would expect that the shape shifting will allow you to be able to use different types of abilities. If you have a bear form, it'll be more tanky. If you have maybe there's a spider form and that's more poison damage or something, and then there'll probably be a shape shift that you do is more of a support base, nature magic, that kind of shit. Is a duo map planned? There's no plans for that yet for duos, so it's going to be trios or solos. Are we going to get a personal player stats tab? Yes, it's information I really want to check when I play. Priority's a bit low. Can we expect additional inventory stash space? So I doubt it. He says it's an important part of the game, so I won't say anything yet. From various angles, we have many concerns. So one of the issues that they talk about, and that Terry has talked about when I've done live Q&As with him, is that they want the stash space to feel like people are being squeezed because they don't want people to just be hoarders, and they want you to be able to or be forced into having to use the things that you acquire. Whether or not that actually ends up being something people do, I don't know. Right now, it seems like the current meta is amass shit tons of money and then turn that money into rusty keys or golden keys that are worth 1,000, 1,250 gold, because 1,250 is the amount of gold that you can put in a single transaction window with 50 gold, per square. So that's what a lot of people are doing now, is they're turning that gold into keys and then reselling the keys at a later time if they need gold. So that's becoming the new currency standard, kind of like a Stone of Jordan from Diablo 2. When will it be possible to gift the game to a friend? We received many requests for this feature. Let's try it. Will you be making it easier to get blue shards? We intend to keep an eye on it a little longer. So one of the main concerns about blue shards is every time that you earn a blue shard, the XP doubles. So the first blue shard's 25 XP, the next one's 50, the next one's 100, and the next one's 200. So the exponential increase in that is a problem for a lot of more casual players because the grind becomes more and more intensive. You do get considerably more experience if you dive into the harder difficulties. So if you go to the hell difficulty, even on normal, if you go to hell, you get more XP for that. And then obviously in high roller, if you survive and get out through a blue portal, you get even more for those difficulty levels. And it looks like you get 10 XP if you survive high roller hell. I don't know whether or not a casual player, if they have experience, I don't know what that looks like. For guys that have a lot of time, obviously it's not as much of a big deal, but this seems like it would take quite a while. If you're talking 6 shards, right, you're talking 25, 50, 100, 200, 400, 400, 800. So that's a lot. That's a lot of a grind just to be able to get like the red skeleton skin if you're starting from 0. Will the game come back to Steam anytime soon? That's our hope, but it's for Steam to decide. So this is the biggest question, I think, on this entire list, is whether or not it's coming back to Steam. Legally speaking, there's no reason why Steam needs to keep the game off. Even if there's an appeal, the appeal is outside of the case having been dismissed. If somebody gets an appeal approved, then the case restarts. The case is still considered over unless the appeal gets approved and the case gets brought back into court. So right now, Steam can relist the game and there's no issues. Like, they don't have any legal liability or whatever. I would assume that the legal liability now flips to where if they don't relist it, that could end up being bad for Steam because they could technically get sued over it if they didn't abide by the DMCA being lifted. I just don't know how this is going to play out. I would assume there's some form of like grace period window. Maybe Steam just drags their feet as long as they possibly legally can to see how the Korean case turns out, or if another DMCA gets filed. I don't know, but we'll see. They probably have like a month or something to be able to actually do something with this. So I don't know what the limited time is. Are there any more events planned in the future? Nothing specific decided yet, but we're interested in various attempts. So they're maybe looking at something outside of holiday events. What kind of cosmetics are planned for the future? We're constantly looking for things that players will be happy with. We'll also be testing this in various ways. So more cosmetic ideas, obviously. When can we expect to see a quiver system? Currently in development. So they're looking at having different types of quivers for Ranger. Probably a good idea. Ranger, of all of the classes, I will say this. Gear dependency being what it is, a Ranger needs a really strong bow in order to be able to feel like they're keeping pace. I think the easiest class to play right now and feel relatively proficient is probably Fighter. And I know that they're looking at doing a balance patch, which is what this question 16 is. State of the game. The game is still in a state where only the core part of the first-person extraction dungeon crawler is implemented, which we know. Obviously, early access being what it is. We don't even have a skill tree yet. There's a whole lot of functionality that they want to add so that the game feels like it's replayable, right? This game needs more systems and more content to keep the season healthy and worth replaying. However, what I am interested in at this point is to defend vulnerabilities as much as possible, meaning the anti-cheat, and build a system to defend the core as effectively as possible. Again, meaning the anti-cheat. So what they're most focused on right now is being bombarded by cheaters. They said something in an announcement earlier, like I think 3-4 days ago, where they were under attack, or they say that they were under attack by people trying to cheat excessively in the game. Now, I personally can't say that I've seen a lot of them, but I'm also running like hobo builds, and I haven't been running in like purples and oranges and stuff, and haven't seen people like zipping through the map, clapping me in 2 and 3 hits, wearing like grays, which I know is a lot of stuff that people have shown in clips. But what I will say about Ironmace, which I will say that is unlike other development teams in this regard, is that they are very communicative, they have been very transparent, and they are very actively, as far as I can tell, like really committed to trying to curb the amount of cheating that goes on in their game. They're devoting an awful lot of time and resources to it, and I personally commend them for that. I think that that's really, really, really honorable in terms of a pursuit for a dev team. As devs go, Ironmace, from what I have seen at least, has been like in the upper tiers in terms of like communicating to the player base what they're trying to do. It's not possible to prevent cheaters 100%, but we are continuing to think about minimizing them in various ways. For that purpose, we will gradually introduce all existing methods. So I would assume that they're looking at doing stuff like hardware IDs and those kinds of things. And we've done interviews with anti-cheat devs in the past, guys that worked for and helped develop, were at the core of building, was in charge of teams for like Valorant's anti-cheat system and stuff that they were implementing and how they were building those things out. This is actually like really interesting stuff to learn about. So if you guys want to check that out, you should go check out that video. That was pretty cool. All right, and then So Bad Strange, my homie So Bad, put together some Q&A stuff for the devs as well. A lot of this seems like it was a little bit repetitive, so we'll kind of look at that, I guess. My main question about this is if I can get a Steam key for having bought the game already. That's a good question. I would assume that if you already own it through this launcher, they will likely pivot, and instead of having the game launch directly from Steam, it will likely launch into their launcher now that it's been built, so it wouldn't necessarily matter. What you could do is just activate the exe file or have the exe file added to the list of games that you have in your Steam library. Like you can just do add a game and then add a non-Steam game, and then it brings up a bunch of exes, and then you could just add the non-Steam game to the list, and then you can launch it from Steam either way. So it functionally would be the same, it just wouldn't be like a physical Steam key. I doubt that they're just going to hand out Steam keys to all of their existing players. I think that would be time-consuming for them, would likely end up being redundant, and then they're going to end up having to, like, turn off one account through, like, their Blacksmith launcher for every player that got a Steam key, and then turn on the Steam keys, and I feel like that would probably create some logistical issues. It would be much more likely that they're just going to end up doling out the new Steam keys, and then people that have the Blacksmith stuff would just, like, have that, and then everybody's cross-platform compatible or whatever. Okay, the meta from prior playtests was to make sort of level 5 mule character that acts as a second bank for our mains. Has there been any more talk about getting backpacks or chests to store things in our stash, or possibly more stash tabs? We've had many ideas and thoughts about stash space, but we won't choose this one easily until we accumulate enough data. So one of the things that people have been saying repeatedly is that they want to have some form of shared stash space where they can transfer items between characters. So far, what I've seen from Ironmace is that they've railed against this because they don't want people just having like big old bank mule characters. And again, the idea is to try to force people to use the items that they're using, and the transactional costs of sending items between characters through like the trade screen or whatever, through friends or, you know, second account if you have one, is to like have a money sink. There's a cost to the transactions. The money sink is small, but there's still some form of a gold sink. It takes some of the money out of the economy at a slow trickle rate. I don't know what this really accomplishes though, because if we're thinking about this honestly, the way that people end up transferring this stuff, again, is through like a friend or a second account. There's like that transactional cost. They could do the same thing themselves and just put money or send money to an alt or send items to an alt by utilizing that in-game transfer stuff. Just make it so that like the second character, like whoever you're trying to move items between, just make it so that that second character has to be a certain level or whatever, like they were using the trade system, and charge them the 15 gold or whatever per transaction in order to be able to move items. Charge them 15 gold per item. Like it doesn't really matter. You could do a lot with this and just make it essentially the same end result for the same cost as if you were using the marketplace, but not actually force them to use the marketplace. You could even force the second account to be a trader, like, you know, do all of that stuff. Just have the transactions become internal as opposed to having to have two parties agree or whatever. The first examples of crafting and mining now have been included in the game. We've also seen maggots, moldy bread, and skulls. Are these newer items for crafting or questing? So they say yes, they're for crafting and questing. They're preparing that stuff. So those items will eventually be used for crafting and questing. I would assume that they're going to end up like doing a seasonal change or wipe the game or something with a larger content update before all this happens. So the idea of trying to amass all of these items probably doesn't make sense right now. At least I would do that, because you know the moment somebody reads this, they're just like, oh, we need to hoard all of this stuff because there's going to be a quest or a craft or something. I would assume that this is going to be months away. So can you chat about your thoughts on the quest system? We see really long and interesting quest chains like Tarkov that could take a month to finish. Our next content development target is quests. If possible, we want it to be a collection of interesting challenges rather than simple repetition. So obviously they're working on a large quest system. Is there any future development plans on the lore end? We've been working on stories related to lore for a long time. The writing work related to this has been sufficiently advanced and has taken concrete shape. So they have a good idea of what they want the lore to be. But think about how to express it naturally in the game. All right. What were the main sources of inspiration for the enemies? What are some of the challenges you face creating new monsters? What can we expect to see in terms of new monsters? Our monsters are meant to be made from familiar things that exist in traditional dungeons. What I specifically want is the monsters to be something that's dangerous enough, and a solution to, I guess, beat them exists. Also, while the monsters are simple enough to respond in a one-to-one situation, it was designed with the expectation that various types of monsters would be mixed in real time to become complex when fighting. Part of what takes time when we develop monsters is tuning them properly to create animations they can recognize, meaning players can recognize and react to. I'm thinking of crafting a new boss that inhabits the Goblin Caves closer, and after adding or updating existing monsters is sorted out to some extent, we're planning on completely new monsters in the newly added area. So they're looking at adding another boss room. The AI and patterns of all these monsters, including the bosses, were created by a single game designer. That said, it takes time. Oh, that's really cool, actually. So there's a single animator that is making up all of the encounters that you have with all of the monsters. Oh, here, I'll change this so that you guys can see this. Will quests in the talent tree be added to the game in early access? Those are the two top priorities in the content side. So quests and talent trees are like 1 and 1A. So there you go. We'll be getting more modifiers and enchantments at any point. So that's the question, is if there's going to be more stat diversification, more modifications to the gear and what you could be buffed by. I like the mechanism, so I really want to implement it. Discussions are active internally due to concerns about balance. It will take some time to decide. Will we get drops unique to every boss, so each boss has something to farm from them other than a named item global loot table? So this question is about if you fight Lich, is the Lich going to drop like a specific item to the Lich? But the item drop tables in its really early stage, the direction I want to go in the future is to have different items for each area and different items for each monster. And we want players to get loot when they want and actively trade for things they don't need or lack. It should look similar to what you find in typical multiplayer RPG games. So that way, like if you kill a mimic, you get a mimic tooth, for instance. He wants to do that, it looks like, with the bosses and like uniques and whatnot. Will there be any major reworks to current classes that are underperforming or not performing as intended? So this was the big question, is what happens at the end of when the leaderboard, when this high roller leaderboard in 9.5 hours, when that ends, then what? So let me just be the first one to tell you guys, there is no like wipe when this timer hits 0. There's no wipe for that. That's not a thing. There's a post in the general chat that's been pinned in Discord that says that they're not like resetting anybody's accounts or anything. It's just that they're ending the leaderboard like session to start the first season. This was like a tester to see like, all right, does this stuff work? Yep, it works. All right, cool. Let's bring everything back to 0. But according to SDF, what he's saying here is that they're going to do a balance pass. We're going to change the balance of classes very drastically after the end of the current leaderboards. We know how difficult it is to balance in this kind of game. Therefore, in the future, all classes will repeat the rise and fall, meaning the meta is going to shift. Damage reduction and rogues are the next major adjustments. So I don't know if that means that rogues are going to get nerfed or if they're getting buffed, but I know that the damage reduction thing is a problem at the moment because ultra geared ultra geared clerics and ultra geared fighters that have like 90% damage reduction and like 70% spell reduction, depending on the gear that they're wearing, is a problem. Because they're so tanky, they're just not dying, like they're not losing life. So I know that this is something that they're probably going to nerf in terms of people's vulnerability. I don't know how they're going to do that other than to like make the curve not as drastic. Like in the earlier parts of the game, have damage reduction be a little bit more effective, and then in the later parts of the game, have damage reduction be less effective. That's like what I really see as being like the only viable alternative. Which also, like, I'd love to see them give spellcasters like a little bit more damage early and have the stat scaling be less as people amass like plus spell damage gear and shit, because they feel like really weak early on and then just fucking overpowered when you get further out. Especially if it's like a bard with Din of Dankness, dude. You get +5 spell damage on a bard using Din of Darkness, and you just steamroll the entire lobby. Everyone fucking dies before they even get to you. Because if you play a full song of Din of Darkness, if you play the entire song all the way through with like +5 spell damage, every tick just blasts people for like 20 points of damage. By the time that they get through like 6-7 seconds of that song, you just killed an entire 3-man. It's fucking broke right now. And that's after they nerfed it. Like, Din of Darkness needs help, bro. That shit is way too fucking strong. All right, anyway. Well, Steam does take 30%. Steam does take 30% of transaction costs. But here's the reason why, okay? For those of you that were here when the game launched on their launcher and a bunch of people flooded Zola and a bunch of people flooded Chaff to buy the game, when all that stuff happened, people were getting charged for the game and not getting a game key. There was all of this back-end shit that was going wrong, right? Steam does not fail at that. No matter how big the rush is, now they have systems in place that scale well enough to where almost universally Steam does not crash and you don't get false transactions. You don't get false positives. So, and I actually talked to Terry about this and I have DMs from him about this. He says, as a game dev, this is why you can justify the 30% cut that Steam takes, because the back end of Steam is already fleshed out and established. This is stuff that game devs don't have to worry about in building because the infrastructure for the transaction stuff is already there. It's done, and people can just buy whatever they're buying, and it does not fail, right? When you have all of those failures, now the devs are scrambling to fix those back-end systems that at one point in time they didn't even have to build, and it takes away from their ability to create their game because now they have to focus on making sure that like their transactional shit is doing what it's supposed to do. Because Steam already has all that in place, according to, again, this is according to the head of Ironmace, he's like, well, that's why we don't have a problem taking the 30% cut, right? And I have a tendency to agree. The number of people that are like, dude, I got fucked out of $150. Like, now I've got to go back and forth with chaff. I don't even know if I'm ever going to see my money again. Fuck this game. Right? Fuck the devs. Like, they don't need all that stress. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's pretty much bulletproof. All right, anyway, but that was the whole dev Q&A. Really interesting stuff, dude. I love the direction that these guys are going in, and I think it's going to be great. All right, yeah. All right, there's the YouTube update for today.